In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a Python program to generate QR code with a graphical user interface, or a GUI. Yeah, we're going to build our own app generating QR codes. What I love about this project is it's actually got practical applications and a real world use. And I think that's a great thing if you're looking for ways to use Python to build your portfolio and to show prospective employers and other people that you can build things with real utility. So our program is going to allow users to input a URL. It will generate a QR code, display it in the app, and we'll also be able to save that QR code image. And by the end, you'll have a fully functional QR code generator that you can use for any project that you like. So let's jump in and build this together right now. So to build this app, I'm going to do it inside Visual Studio Code or VS Code. And I've got a brand new Python file called qrcodegenerator.py. But before we get started with coding, we've got to make sure we've got the required libraries installed. So we're going to be using QR code for generating QR codes and Pillow or Pill for handling images in Python. Now these don't come with Python by default, so you need to install them. And it's really easy to do. You just head over to your own terminal. So here I am in the terminal right here. And I just have to run the following command. So I do pip install QR code. I've obviously, let me add another L to install. I've already got this installed. So if I run this now, it'll just tell me that it's already there. Obviously, you would run this command to install QR code, requirement satisfied, because I already have it. There's no surprises there. Great. So we can clear that off. And then the other one we need to install is Pillow, if you don't already have Pillow installed. And again, I have this installed, so I'd run this command and say requirement satisfied, but make sure that you install Pillow as well. Okay, so once you've got your libraries installed, we head back up to VS Code, and we're going to be creating our app. So first things first is that to create the GUI for this, we're going to be using Tkinter or Tkinter, depending on how you pronounce it. That's included with Python by default, so that will be great for building our GUI. Let's start with our imports. So at the very beginning, we're going to import, and we usually do that as TK. That's fairly standard practice. And then from Tkinter, we want to import GTK, and we also want to import message box. Great. And now we want to import QR code, which is what I mentioned that we're going to be using for creating our QR codes. And then also from Pill, which is for Pillow, we're going to import image and image TK. Great. Now notice I did two different versions of importing here. Notice I've done two imports from Pill in one line, and here I did it on two lines. I did this deliberately to show that there's multiple ways to do the same thing. You can choose whichever option makes sense to you. So again, we've got our libraries imported. We'll be using Tkinter to create the GUI, QR code generating QR codes, and Pillow will allow us to work with generated images. So now what do we need to do next? Well, we're going to write a function to generate a QR code from the URL provided by the user. So let's start off with that. So let's create this function. We'll just start to scaffold it. So we're going to call it generate QR code. That's our function. And then what do we want in here? Well, we're going to want to collect a URL entered by the user. And we're going to assign this to a variable. And we're then going to use this URL to generate our QR code. So let's assume at the moment that we're going to have an entry field in our GUI called entry URL. And we're going to fetch that with a get method, which is built in to the Tkinter library, and that will fetch the value from that. So we can simply say URL is equal to entry URL.get. Okay, so we're going to have to create this entry URL field later, and we're going to use that to fetch the user's URL value. And we're going to say the following: if not URL, so if they haven't given us anything, we will then use message box to show error. And when we're showing our error, we'll just say the following error. And then we can add the following: please enter a valid URL. So this is again built into Tkinter. You notice that we did our import of message box up here. And what we're saying is if the user hasn't given us URL, we're going to essentially show an error and let the user know that they need to enter a valid URL. And this will become really obvious when we actually create the app. But here we go. We've scaffolded out at the beginning of this function. What do we need to do next? Well, let's assume that the user does give us the URL. We need to do something with that URL, don't we? Yes, we're going to generate a QR code. And how will we do that? Well, we're going to use the QR code library. I'm going to say the following: QR is equal to QR code. Then we're going to use QR code, and then we're going to pass in a bunch of parameters. We're going to say version with 1. We're going to say error correction is equal to the following: constant error correct H. Great. Now, box size, you can set this to whatever you like, but I'm going to go with 5, and then border, I'm going to go with 2. Brilliant. So that is going to generate our QR code. Okay. So what we want to do now is we need to add some data to this. So we're going to add data, and this is going to be our URL, which is obviously essential for generating the URL QR code that we're looking to do. And then finally, we can use the make function to make this, and we're going to say fit is equal to true, so it fits nicely. Okay, so that is all we need to do to generate our QR code. Okay, we've created our QR code. We used the QR code library. We've passed in a bunch of parameters. Most important ones here really are that when we go to add data, once we've got our QR object, we've used the URL to generate the QR code, and we've used the make method to ensure that we generate it. Okay, so if you want to learn more about how to use the QR code library, I would recommend reading the docs. But for the case of this example in this tutorial, this is all you need to know. So what do we want to do next? We want to create an image from our QR code. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to create a new variable called QR image, and then we're going to use our make image method built into the library. We're going to say the fill color. What should we say? Fill color. I think we're going to go with black for that. That makes sense to me. And then back color equals white. So that's a fairly standard setup. You could obviously make this whatever you want. You could get more jazzy. You can use whatever you like when you go black and white. So I think that's the simplest way to do it. And then I want to save this image. Now, you don't have to do this step, but if you want to save the image after generating, you can choose the save method. And we're simply going to call it qrcode.png. So if we wanted to persist the image, maybe we want to put it somewhere else, maybe we want to upload it somewhere, whatever it is we want to do, we can use this save method to do that. That's really handy. So finishing off, we've got our QR code. We've used that to make an image. Now we want to do what? To display it in our application. So to do that, we're going to have to interact with image TK from Pillow. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to say QR image TK is equal to image TK dot photo image. And we're going to pass in the following image dot open. And we're going to open what? Let's try it. The image that we've just saved, qrcode.png. Now, of course, if you didn't want to save the image, you could generate the image within here and then pass it in as the parameter. But I think it makes more sense to just save it like we've done and then open it this way. Right. So then what do we do next? We're going to, oh, excuse me, I've got a spelling error, QR label. And we're going to config this. And we're going to say the following: image is equal to QR image TK. Now, one thing I will say is that some of this will become more apparent when we've actually created some of the widgets and labels, etc., within our Tkinter GUI further down. But if you just keep track of what we're creating, you'll see that it matches up in a moment. Of course, if you wanted to, you could scaffold out your Tkinter GUI first and build all this afterwards. That's completely your choice. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm doing it this way around. So we've done that. So we've said the image is equal to that. And then we want to assign image to QR image TK. Okay. Lovely. We need to make sure that's closed properly. Good. And then finally, we're going to have a result label config for this. And we're going to say the text is equal to QR code generated successfully. Great. So as you can see, we have now reached what I believe is the natural endpoint of this function. We're generating a QR code. And what have we done? Well, we've collected the URL. We've ensured that it's there. We've sent an error message back to the user. We've used that with the QR library to generate a QR, which is this object or variable here. We've then used add data method to pass in the URL. We've then made the QR and then used that to make an image. And then within that image, we've saved it. And we've then used that with image TK from the Pillow library to be able to create an image that we're then going to use within our Tkinter GUI. So essentially this function grabs a URL, validates whether it's there or not, uses the QR code class to generate a QR code with specific settings, and bear in mind you can change the box size and borders whatever you like, and then we've saved the QR code and displayed it in the GUI. So that should be everything we need to actually grab information, generate a QR code, and display it to the user. Now the final step is simply to do what? Well, we need to set up the user interface, okay? So we can now exit this function. We've made our function. Now we're going to create our main window. So this is standard behavior for working with Tkinter. So we create our root. We're then going to set a title. And I'm just going to simply call this something simple like QR code generator. The thing I would say is that when it comes to working with Tkinter or any other GUI generating library that you want to use, you can tweak this as much as you like. I'm showing you a basic setup. This app is to give you the framework and the scaffolding to do whatever you want with this and to expand it however you like. So feel free to keep it simple like I'm doing, or feel free to get more creative if that's what you're interested in doing. So geometry is going to be the size. I'm going to say it's 400 by 500, not 400, not 40. Great. And then next, we want to configure this with a background. And I'm going to say BG is equal to the following. I'm going to say this 7. Great. Okay, so that is our main window. This initializes the application window, sets the title, defines the size, and gives it a light background color. So the final step is that we then need to do what we need to add input fields and other parts to our GUI. So the most important part is we need an input field for the URL and a button to trigger the QR code generation. So imagine we can allow the user to input their information, hit the button, generate the QR code, and then begin that displayed. So I think the first thing that we want to do is we need a label. And this label is going to be the following. So we can have label URL, GT label, and obviously we need to assign this to root and then give it some text. And we're going to say URL to let the user know what we want them to do. And then what could we do? We could set the background, and I think we could set the background to the same color that we have here. So I'm just going to copy this rather than writing it out again. Okay, so that is our label, which is going to give the user instructions. We're then going to pack this, and we're going to add it in Y by, say, 10. Now we need our entry field, which allows users to enter the URL. So for this entry URL, notice that this ties back into what we had up here, how we're collecting the URL of the user. So now I'm creating this field down here. So it might seem backwards. You could do it this way around first, create Tkinter elements and go back and generate your code function. Either is fine. So entry URL, we're going to say TTK entry, and then what do we need to assign that to root? I'm going to set the font. I'm going to say that is equal to the following. So I'm going to say Helvetica, and I'm going to give this a size of 12. And then what do you want to do? I'm going to set this as a width with a value of 40. So you can obviously put that to whatever size you want. Again, get creative with the GUI design. I actually think it's a really great way to get better at UX and UI if you want to go down that field. So then finally, entry URL, we're going to pack this, and also going to give it something like it. And that is our field for entering the URL. What do we need now? We need a button that users can press to generate a QR code. It's going to trigger our command to generate the QR code. Let's call this button generate. We're going to make it TTK button. Great. And then what do we need? So we're going to assign it to root, give it some text, and we're going to say generate QR code. So that's fairly self-explanatory. Then we need to assign a command, which is going to be the function we've defined up here. And that command is obviously going to be generate QR code. That's what we want it to trigger once the user presses the button. Then we're going to add some style. And we're going to say this is a T button. Great. So that is that. And then what do we want to do? I think we're going to add some padding to this too. So let's pack it and then add some padding in the Y equal to 20, or 20, not 30. Great. Okay. So now the entry URL is a text field where users can input the URL, and the generate button is going to call our function when it's clicked. The final bit, of course, is that we then need to enable the QR code to be displayed. So we're going to create our QR label. Remember I mentioned that up here. So we're going to create that now. We're going to say it's ttk.label. Assign it to root, of course. Background again. I'm going to use the same color. Great. And then we're going to pack this. Give it padding in Y10. Okay, so that's the label to display the QR code. And we also need our result label. Let's label result. Again, I also have this over here. So I'm now defining it down here. My result label, TTK, another label. And to root. Text is equal to blank. So we can input this on the fly, of course. Font is also going to be what I did before. So we'll call this Helvetica. I'll give it a size of maybe 14 for this one. And then what else do we want to add this? I think the background will add the same color that we have here. So add that. And then also add corporate color. This as the following. Excellent. Okay, and then obviously let's pack this again. So we're packing everything as you've noticed. The label result, pack, we're going to pack that in Y with 20. Great. So let's finish off by essentially starting the application. I think that is the key thing. We could add some more styling if we wanted to. I'd recommend you to add more styling if you'd like to make it more stylish. But for the purposes of this demonstration. We could leave it there, or maybe I'll just add some styling while we're doing it. I mean, why not? Let's work on some styling while we're in the neighborhood. So if I could type style correctly, style equals ttk.style. Okay. And then what we're going to do, we're going to configure this equals Vertica, and we're going to give it size of 12. Things equal to, should we go with 5? Seems reasonable. And then let's map this. So following T button, and then we've got background is equal to, well, we've got a list here of active and inactive. So I think for the following, we're going to have basically tuples. So we're going to create our active, and then we're going to say that color is equal to 0, 0, 5, 6, 3. Okay, that's our active setup. Then we need our inactive. So again, tuple. So we're going to say not active. And then we're going to say that color should be what? I think I'll go 007B. How exciting is that? Okay, so that is our first list. And then we want to do our foreground. So we've done the background. Let's also now do the foreground. I'm just coming over here so I can see what I'm doing. But we'll go back. We'll let it. So I've got automatic pretty print set up, or rather saving. We've got prettier installed, so I'm going to let it do it for me rather than doing it now. So foreground is equal to, got our list, and we've got tuples. We can create those right away. 2 tuples, and then we can have what? Active. And then we're going to set this as white. And then our second tuple, we're going to say inactive, or rather not active, and we can set this also to white. Okay, I'm going to save this. It's applied some formatting for me, very nice. So the final bit is we need to run the main loop. And what do we do? Well, we've got our root here, and we simply use the root main. If I could type it properly. Oh my goodness, look at this. Root main loop. Okay, so that is what's going to keep our application running, waiting for user interaction. So that is the final stage. That is what you always need whenever using Tkinter for creating a GUI. So that's it. We have now finished this, and I think the final part is to essentially generate our first QR code. So let's go and do that right now. I'm going to run this. I'm going to head back over to the terminal. Python QR code. I'm going to run my QR code generator. And we've got an error, unknown name. So it looks as though I have forgotten to add a hash. So let's go and find that now. Run our way through. Where have we forgotten this? So obviously that should be lowercase m. Spotted that as well. What else? Where have I missed my hash? Where have I missed my hash? Can we spot it anywhere? 2 hashes here. That's not going to help matters, is it? So we've got 2 hashes there. And obviously a hash here. All right, so error correcting and debugging on the fly. So easy to make these kind of errors. We will save that. Let's go back in and try once more. So I'm going to clear the screen, run this. And what have we got here? Unknown color name, F0, F4, F7. So where is this? What line is this at? In line 35, background. I missed another one. So line 35, background, here it is. All right, so I've obviously been copying it over and forgetting to copy the hash. So that is my error there. So I hope some of you spotted that while I was doing that, but hopefully that will now fix it. So let's clear that again. And let's try one more time. What have we got here? Another one, line 47. No surprises there because I've been copying it over and over. And there we go. Hopefully that is the last one. Let's save this once more, clear it again, try it again, run it. And there we go. Things are working as you'd expect. So here is our QR code generator. Excellent. So thank you for bearing with me when I did a bit of debugging, but hopefully you see this happens to everyone, especially when you're walking along and you're talking about things, not paying as much attention as you should. So I want to generate a QR code for, let's go with hackr.io. That is where we're going to be publishing things like this. Let's generate our QR code. There it is. It's generated successfully. So what I want to do now is I want to check whether this works. So what I'm going to do is let's essentially, let's go back over here, and I am going to use my phone to scan this QR code, and we're going to see if it takes me to the website. So let's do that in a minute. Okay, I've got my phone into the camera app. As you can see, camera app. I'm going to scan this QR code, hit enter, and what do we see? Can you see that? Hackr.io. That has worked. So as you can see, I'm trying to get that out of the reflection. That has successfully worked, and we have loaded a website by using the QR code we just generated ourselves. So there you have it, a fully functional QR code generator built with Python. I hope you're excited to build it yourself and you can see the applications for this in the real world. Don't forget to leave your own comments, let us know your own experiences or anything that you'd like to see in the future. And as always, hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.